Welcome to My Life. We're very pleased to have Julia Murray with us today. Judy is a member of the local American Legion and has been for 50 years. She was in the Women's Army Corps in the 1950s. She bakes for the Ladies Auxiliary, I understand, and her cakes have a marvelous reputation. And she's also a member of St. Vincent's Parish in Pontiac, where she's lived for the last 21 years. But prior to that, she resided in Oxford for around 60 years, so she's very familiar with our community. Now, you got to tell me about those cakes. What cakes are you so well known for?
I make an amaretto cake, and I make a lemon cake. And the amaretto cake, I use box from one of the companies, and I use 4 eggs, and then a half a cup of amaretto, a half a cup of water, and a half a cup of oil. And then I bake it, and when it's out and it's cooled, then I take it out of the pan and turn it over, and then I take like a meat fork and punch all around the cake, make holes in it, and then I mix half a cup of amaretto and a cup of sugar, and I warm that up, and then I pour that all on over the cake.
Now, that recipe will be available on our website, but it's top secret, so you can't tell anybody.
And my lemon cake, I buy lemon cake mix, and I bake it the way it says on the box. And then when it's ready, I take lemon pudding, either the box or the little cups that you can get in the store, and whipped cream. And I mix whipped cream and lemon pie filling and put it on top of the lemon cake.
That's great.
That's my second cake that I make for them.
Hey, will somebody tell Lulu on Lulu's cooking show that she doesn't have a chance anymore with this?
Okay.
How long have you been doing that?
Probably about 10, 12 years maybe.
A long time.
Yeah.
But you've had a very interesting life, both career-wise and service-wise. Where were you born, though? Were you born around here?
No, I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1932.
And what were your parents doing in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Well, my mother and father are Jasper and Hazel Reed. And I believe in that time they had moved to Tulsa because there was work there for my mother and father. Mm-hmm. And so we lived there, well, till I was born anyway. And then my father heard about coming to Pontiac.
What was he doing for a living down there?
You know what, I'm really not sure what he did. I know my mother worked in a laundry, and whatever she made there, why then she went to the grocery store and bought our dinner for us. So like I say, I'm not sure what my mother did or father did, but I think I was about 3 when my father left to come to Pontiac, Michigan and work in the factory.
Before we get into that, let me ask you one other thing. Did you know any of your grandparents?
I had a grandmother that lived in Illinois, and I did not know I had one until probably I was, I don't know, 10, 12 years old. And my mother must have got in touch with her. And so she used to come from Illinois to Oxford.
After you moved up here?
Yeah, and come and visit us with us for about a week or so, and then she'd get on a bus and go back to Illinois. And I had grandparents in Arkansas, but I only saw them once, so I was really not associated with them because they live so far away.
Did you ever try and trace your family heritage at all?
No, I've heard it on TV that you could go, for that, but I've not.
How did your mom and dad find each other?
Well, my dad was a cook in the Army, and he happened to be stationed up around in Illinois.
Was this World War II time?
Before that.
Before that, it would have to be, wouldn't it?
And I'm not sure how, my mother must have been working in a store or something, and they sort of liked each other, and so they got married and started moving. They went to Missouri, and they had my brother, and then they came back to Illinois, and they had my sister, and then we moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they had me.
Boy, they were on the move a
Yeah,
lot,
they
weren't
were.
they?
Yep. And then, like I say, my father came up to Pontiac and worked in the factory, and he.
So it was the job that
Yes,
brought him here.
Yes, and he found this house in Oxford on Denison Street, and so he notified my mother, and she and I and my brother and sister got on a bus and came to Michigan.
You were how old at this point?
About 3 years old.
3 years old.
Yeah, and I think my sister was probably about maybe 4. She's a year and a half older than I am, and my brother Jerry is 5 years older than I am.
Okay, so you're the youngest.
I'm the youngest. I hate to say it, but my mother and father passed away. My brother passed away about 5 years ago, and my sister just passed away about 6 months ago.
I'm
So
sorry.
I'm the last of the Reeds.
Last of the Reeds.
last of the clan, yes.
Okay, so you really came to Pontiac in the 1930s, right?
Yes.
And what do you remember about your younger days here in Pontiac? What school did you go to start with?
Well, I didn't go to school until we moved to Oxford because I was too young
Right.
to go, when I was 3 or 4 years old. But when my father found the house on Denison Street, well, then we moved. We came into Pontiac and we lived some apartments on Pike Street in Pontiac. And we were there probably, 6 months or so. And then my father found, like I say, the house in Denison Street, and we moved there.
Mm-hmm.
So my father, I think they laid off everybody at the factory, and so then my father went to work for, trying to think what, DPW, for the government had that thing so that you do the work and then they pay you, on the roads
Right.
and this sort of stuff. So that's where my father was working, and my mother cleaned houses, and there was Whitcomb and Mapley were the two big homes on Burdick Street, and my mother used to go there and house clean for them. And Mapley had the funeral home at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and that was uptown, right on the main drag of Oxford. And so my mother worked for them, and
It kind of sounds like they were fighting their way out of the Depression back then.
Yes. And so when I was 5, my sister went to, I was 4 and my sister was 5. So we went to school in Oxford and my brother was already there. And I was in kindergarten and she was in the 1st grade. And then I went from the kindergarten to the 1st grade, and I was sitting in there when they brought 2 little girls in. They looked like they're...
Okay, we're going to take a
Okay.
brief break before we get into that right
Okay.
now.
All right.
Hold that thought, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Don't miss what's going on in your local government meetings. Watch Elgin Nichols and Dave Kinney on Minutes by Minute. Airs Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., 11:30 a.m., and 11:30 p.m., where they add a touch of humor to local politics.
Back with Judy Murray on My Life. You were just starting to tell us about starting in grade school, I believe?
Yes. I was in the 1st grade, and the principal brought these 2 little girls in. Excuse me, and they said, well, we have 2 more new children for your 1st grade class. And we looked at them and we said, they belong in kindergarten. They're too little to be coming in here for the 1st grade. And one of the girls, her name was Dawn Hempstead, and the other one was Helen Howes. And they said, no, hey, they belong here. So they came and they sat, and we started getting acquainted with them. And we had recess, and we used to go out and we had the swings and we had the bars to do flips and this sort of stuff.
What school would this have been?
Daniel Axford.
Okay.
So it wasn't very far from our house on, on Denison Street. So then they had this one thing that looked like a flagpole, but there was metal coming down and a handle on the bottom of it. And if you held one-handed and you started running around in circles, and you'd get enough people to do the whole thing, you'd go way out and your legs would come off and swing around and everything. So that was really neat. And the football field at that time was where Oxford football team played, was at the same place. And so we lived there. I lived there and I went to school in Daniel Axford until probably the 5th or 6th grade. And I forgot to tell you that these 2 girls came in, and that's when they started busing kids out in the country and bringing them in so that they could, go to school at Oxford. And so.
But you were close enough that you could walk to school every day, weren't you?
Yes, it was pretty close, and we played there, and the girls came in, and like I say, they started busing kids from out in the country, and so there really wasn't much significance going on from 1st grade until 5th grade. And then they said that there was too many kids in Daniel Axford, and they didn't have room for the 5th grade kids going into 6th grade. So we went to the high school, and that was north of Oxford, where the new fire department is now. Was a huge building, and if you went downstairs in the basement, there was a tunnel, and you could walk through and come out to the gymnasium, so you didn't have to go outside. And so we were down in the basement, and we had this one room, and our room was next door to the FFA, which is Future Farmers of America, that had another room on just right next to us. And then across the hall was our art teacher, and her name was Mrs. Williams. And I thought
You have a very good memory. I want to go back to grade school for just a minute.
Okay.
Do you have any special memories about things you really loved to do in grade school during that era, besides playing on the playground as you described before?
In kindergarten, I liked to ride the tricycle. And I was a very bad girl. I used to hide, when they said we're doing something else, why I'd go hide it in the boys' bathroom so they couldn't find it. It was a tricycle for girls and a tricycle for boys, and I hid ours in the boys' bathroom.
Oh, for crying
so the
out
girls couldn't see it. I was very bad.
Any special things you did with your parents back then when you were younger?
Yes, we had a pretty good sized side yard, so we could play baseball on it and get the kids that lived around on Denison Street and on Pontiac Street. So we played baseball and kicked the can and all different things. And when in the wintertime, my dad used to float it so we could ice skate on it. And so we got more kids around to come and play. And I remember it was Halloween time, and so we went up and down our street, and the people lived just, 5 or 6 doors from us. Their names were Francis, and he was the Oakland County sheriff. And he had 2 children, Milton and Rosalind Francis. And so they used to come and play around with us, and then there was people lived across the street from them. When we knock on the door and say trick or treat, he'd say, okay, come on in. So we went in and he said, okay, let's see your trick. We were dumbfounded because we never had him say that before. And we told him we didn't know anything how to do, and he said, well, then I guess you don't get candy either. So I said, well, we'll tap dance. So we were jumping up and down. And he said, okay, that's good.
That did the job.
That did your candy.
Right.
So
one thing I have to ask you about, it seems to me that the way you moved around the country and stuff, you didn't really have grandparents close to you.
No.
And you probably didn't have aunts and uncles close to you, did you?
No.
But I'll bet a lot of the other kids did. In fact, back in those days, a lot of grandparents lived with, their kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you miss that, having seen that with friends?
Well, I really didn't see much of the grandpas and grandmas that, when we were living on Denison Street, and we lived there for quite a few years. And the people that lived sort of across the street from us was Mr. and Mrs. Otto Boat. And he had a meat market uptown next door to the bank. And you could go in and order your meat, and he had a big cold shelves things that all the different meats and everything, and you could pick that up, or if you wanted something specially cut, then he would do that, and you could take it home with you. And I think I was maybe about 5 or 6. Mrs. Boat called my mother, and she said, "Could Judy come over?" And my mother said, "Well, what do you want her to do?" And she said, "I want her to come wash some dishes for me and help me clean house." So on Saturday, I used to go over there every Saturday and help wash dishes and dust and all the things, anything she wanted me to do, she did. And when we got done, why, she gave me a nickel. And so she says, "You take this nickel and you can go to the show." So that's what it cost to go to the show in Oxford, probably 1938 or 1939. And it cost us a nickel, and we'd walk from our house to the show and then come back. And so we got acquainted with a few more people in Oxford by doing that. And we moved from Denison Street over to Inslee Street in Oxford.
Okay, let's pause there for just a moment, because we need to take a break, but we'll continue in just a minute, so come on back.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website, dogsaver.org, and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.
Back with Judy Murray on My Life. You were talking about when you moved from the Burdick Street address?
Denison.
Denison Street address, sorry.
To Inslee Street in Oxford.
What was the reason for the move? Was it a bigger house, or?
Yes. And so we moved there, and my brother had a car by that time, driving it to school, Model A, and my sister and I walked to school. And when noontime came, you had to walk home and get your lunch and turn around and walk back to school before 1 o'clock. So we had to hoof it hoof it pretty good.
Not many kids do that these days, do they?
No, I don't think so.
I bet Oxford looked a lot different then than it does now.
Well, you know, it was like a little family town that sat outside of everything else, and it seemed like everything revolved around whatever was going on there. They had, in the park, they used to have music in the evenings coming, and different things that the kids could do up there in the park.
Sure.
And we had a couple of lakes that were quite a bit away from us in Oxford, but we didn't go there. But when we moved to Denison, or Pearl, we moved from Denison to Pearl, and I was probably maybe about 11 or 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And in the summertime, well, when my mother and father were working, and so we had our chores around the house to do, and then we would make us a bologna sandwich and a bottle of pop, and we used to walk to Stony Lake.
What was your favorite pop?
I think it was Pepsi.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, and we'd get to Stony Lake, and there was a man that ran the concession stand, so you gave him a nickel. That's what everywhere we went was cost a nickel, and he would give us a basket to put our clothes in and change clothes into our bathing suit, and then would put our clothes in the basket and give it to him. It had a number on it, and so when we got ready to leave, all we had to do was just ask for number such and such. But he was a very nice man. He used to take our sandwiches and put them in his fridge, and we took our pop and went down to the lake and walked over as far as we could, and we buried it in the sand and the water and left it there until lunchtime, and then and then we had cold pop and our bologna sandwich. And the man that ran the concession stand was Judge Stevens. So he lived in Oxford, but he must have had that house to be able to run the concession. Mm-hmm. So that's usually what we did in the summertime, was go swimming. And sometimes there was a fire escape that came out of the high school, one of the upper rooms, and it was a big round tube. And in the summertime, we used to take wax paper and walk up to the top of the thing and slide down. And so we spent quite a few hours doing.
Were you supposed to do that?
No.
But
well,
you didn't
school
tell
was
anybody.
out. School was out, so it was just something else to keep the kids occupied.
Now, was that at the old high school?
Yes. And that was a beautiful school. When we came back in the fall and came inside, they were all wood floors, and they shone just perfect. There wasn't a mark on them or anything. And we had a 2-story school, and you had lockers upstairs and downstairs. And like I say, when we were in 6th grade, when I was in the basement, I used to just sit there and wait for the bell to ring, and I'd put my hand up, and she said, yes. I said, I have to go to the bathroom. Okay, now make sure you can find your way with all these kids walking around. Well, the only reason I told her I had to go to the bathroom was I wanted to go out and walk among the high school kids and see what it felt like. And then the bell would ring to make sure that they got back into their classes. And then I went back downstairs and got in the room. I was a very bad girl then anyway. And we had a math teacher named Mrs. Stoneberg. And she had three lives before that she taught these kids, the mother and father, the grandparents, the mothers and fathers, and the children's children, that she had been there so long. And she taught math, and she was a little old lady. She walked to school. She was probably only maybe a couple blocks from the high school, so she walked back and forth through there.
Now, right around this time was probably around the time that World War II was just getting underway.
Yes.
What kind of thoughts were going through your family's mind when all this was stirring up in the world?
Well, I know my father was a warden in our certain area, so he walked the streets to make sure all the lights were out, and anything that happened, why then he would be there to find out what they could do. And we always had to bring the Polish aids down, so no lights shone outside, so that in case they decide to come and bomb us, they couldn't determine that this was a town or whatever. They shut off all the lights and everything, and it was very very scary thinking that this was going on, and we were might have something happen to us, but we were very lucky that nothing happened to us.
Now, your siblings were both older than you, right?
Yes.
Were you worried about your brother being drafted or anything?
My brother was drafted when he graduated. He graduated from Oxford High School, and while he was going through school, he went to work for an electric company that was on Main Street in Oxford. It's called Rames Electric, and he started his tutoring of becoming an electrician there. And so when he was old enough to go in, and with that going into the Army, they had sent him to Alaska, and he was up there maybe, he said they went out and got up into this building, and looking across he could see Russia from there, from where he was stationed. So he said it was quite an interesting place that he was able to, he said it was always snow, and when he did come home, why he had this coat on, was all fur, and he had the boots, the muckluck boots all around, and his coat was all furry, his hood and everything. It was so pretty, and he really liked it up there.
Did he ever want to go back?
No, I don't think so. I think he was ready to do some work and maybe find somebody to get married and have a...
Well, if he was stationed in Alaska during World War II, he was probably in a pretty good place.
Yes.
With all that was going on.
Not much going on.
Didn't worry as much about him as other parents were about their own kids.
Yes, I believe
Okay, so you finally moved on to your lifetime goal of getting into high school.
Yes.
You were finally mixing with the crowd that you wanted to mix with.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How'd you like high school?
Well, I really liked high school because when I'd go out and the boys were whistling, going up and down the stairs, and the girls were giggling and laughing and talking and all this sort of stuff. And then when the other bell rang, why they were probably standing outside of their room so they could go into the room so they wouldn't be late in there, because they'd get tardy marks against you if you didn't get in your room when you're supposed to.
Well, I know that we've got a lot more to talk about, not just high school, but eventually you got into the military right around the time of the Korean War, I believe. And you had a very interesting occupation too, where you got to know a lot of people here in our neck of the woods. So we're going to have another segment with Judy Murray, so we hope you'll join us for that when we come back. In the meantime, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
This is OCTV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford and Addison Townships with the best in local programming. On Charter Channel 191, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and our website, OCCTV.org. OCTV, we provide local programming that brings you closer to home.
A small town with a lot of heart and history. A hidden gem with a sense of community. Welcome to Leonard.